I want to try the new lens on this finance. Somebody was in here last night saying the new lens on them were great. Oh, look, they got you muffins.
We know how you like them. Oh, she had all her muffins. She had enough blueberry muffins.
We're going to take 15-minute break, turn into 20. I'm going to do this little intro at the very beginning, but now it's fitting in time as ever. Just a little introduction for Shane. I don't know how well everybody around here knows him. But just a little background information. 5 years ago, Shane walked. I owned a retail store in Waldorf. Shane walked in and he was like, "Hey, what's up? I'm new in town." And we just kind of became friends. I watched him over the last 5 years, and I watched him with dogs. And at first I thought it was something anybody could do. And very quickly I saw that we lived together for 2 years. I'd see these dogs come in acting crazy, and 2 weeks later, very obedient. I was really surprised. Shane, he knows more than pretty much anybody I've talked to in a long time about dogs, and he seems to be open to seeking outside help when he doesn't know, and I think that's a really respectable thing. But he's about to come back and teach us some more stuff, so yes.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, so all the information that I gave you guys was, just me giving one form of communication to you. And that's kind of a point I wanted to prove, is that if you have a single form of communication, you're only going to absorb so much, because just like humans have different learning styles. Some people are visual, some people are audio, and some people need to, there's another one, but I can't think of it. She knows it, she's a teacher. What's the other form of learners? Learning. Visual, audio, and then like touch?
Yeah, see, hear, touch.
See, hear, touch, yeah. So we're going to talk about the positive reinforcement, the drives, and things like that. So this dog, a lot of times, can't resist her drive to go play with objects and counter surf and take things. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to train Astrid to avoid getting this bottle. But before I go, can someone grab me one of those training treat bags off the back? I forgot to grab it.
Oh, it's doing.
Doing? Yeah, doing, yeah. So some people actually have to physically do, so that's why tomorrow we're going to work these dogs, and I'm going to coach you and say, no, you're doing it wrong. No. So with that, my timing was off. When I should have gave her the correction was when she was flying up to get the bottle. But the second, she's still going to understand, but to have a perfect time correction would have been the moment that she was doing. No, the small training treats.
She's like.
And one of the clear plastic bags?
No, sir, the other bag.
Okay, I got you.
All you have to do is.
Good, we'll just take a break. She can be on camera for a bit. Isn't she so cute? Look at her.
She knows something's coming, and it's in a
She
bag.
knows the treats are coming. So
She likes this part.
typically when we do training, they got these cool little training bags that we put on a little pouch.
So just give her the bag?
No, sir. That would be deconditioning the dog. We don't want to decondition the dog. So I'm gonna take a handful of treats here. Now we're going to use positive reinforcement, and then we're going to use positive punishment in this example to train the dog to not go after the bottle, right? She wants to go. No, come. Yes, good girl. So we'll reapproach the bottle. No, come. Oh, yes. Reapproach the bottle. Ignoring it. She's look at that. She didn't want to look at it. Yes, good girl. Do you see how she was just like literally walked her butt across to it?
Yeah.
She doesn't want to get pressure. So the thing here is I'm giving a collar correction on this huge flat collar. This is about a 2.5-inch flat collar. So giving a correction with this collar would not register the same as giving a correction with this choke chain or control collar, right? So depending on the dog's severity and how much drive and how hard the dog's going, I may switch tools. So now I'm going to go and show you something else. So I know her prey drive is like literally through the roof. So when I kick this bottle, or here, we're going to have you do it. You're going to volunteer, if you don't mind. Okay. So you're going to toss that bottle when I tell you to. Her prey drive and her brain is immediately going to kick in. I'm going to stand my ground, and she's going to get corrected when she goes after it. But then I'm going to immediately redirect and reward her, and we're going to do this process probably 3 times, and hopefully she won't show a response for going after it. So toss it. Oh, good. Yes. So she proved me wrong. She didn't go after it. So
You want me to get it?
So
yeah.
stay away from it.
Now you can toss it. So she's already been conditioned. I've already given her correction. Say she didn't go after it. No, come. Yes, good girl. And do you see how it's okay to give these type of corrections with the right dog? But if we're doing this with a psychologically damaged dog, you're not going to get this response. You're going to get a different response, so we're not going to do this tool. This is for normal dogs. Did it already again? Throw it across the ground. Good, yes. So this is a high level of training of teaching her to override prey drive. So you do this drill over and over, throwing objects, teaching the dog to no longer go after prey, no longer go after cats, and things of that sort. So, can anyone in the audience tell me, out of like positive punishment, negative reinforcement, what I'm doing? Like, what are all the things I'm doing? This looks like I'm correcting the dog, giving the dog a treat. What am I using? I'm developing a routine, yes. That's correct. Redirecting. So I'm using, I'm using positive punishment, which is the correction when she goes to take off and prey drive. And then I'm using positive reinforcement when she's doing correct after I redirect and rewarding. It's a whole series of things that we're doing, and there's a scientific method to this. So now we start with basic obedience, right? You want to teach dog come drills? Come! Good! Yes! Now you hear that I'm using these words. These words may sound a little strange to you. I use the word good, I use the word yes, and I use the command of come. So the word good is a bridge. So the dog, when I told the dog a command, I give the dog a bridge, which is letting the dog know that I'm saying good, right? Good. She's going to understand that good means good. But she's also going to understand that when she hears good, there's going to be the word yes, which means you're getting a reward. So not all of us are going to go to Petco, carry a clicker around with us and do clicker training all the time. We want to be able to use our voices in the same way that we use a clicker. So the way that we use our voice and the way that we use a clicker is to say yes. Yes means you've completed the command, and now you're going to get rewarded. Come. Good. Yes. And then I reward. So the other thing that we're using, I want you to write this down, is we're using a continuous reward schedule. So this is a puppy. She's 9 months old. I need to condition her to do these commands. Come. Yes. Good. You can say good afterwards. You say good before, but typically you want to say good and then do yes. But as long as the dog starts to hear it. Come. Good. Yes. We do this process over and over again. Come. Good. Yes. Come. Good. Come. Good. Yes. Now I did a series of comes, right? Come, come, and if she wasn't rewarded for all three, that would be called a random reward schedule. So I made her do 2 commands. She didn't know when the reward was coming, but she, I had a series. So that's where you start to break it up. That's advancing the dog through the training stages. Come, you're going to learn the training stages. Good. Come. Good. Come. Sit. So she jumped on me, and I don't like that. I'm going to use negative punishment, withholding the treat, withholding the reward because she jumped and scratched me. Come. Good. Yes. Good girl. Now I'm going to give physical praise. And, good girl. Come. Good. Yes. And even the yes, like the yes, is like a high-pitched voice. You don't always have to go, good girl. But a lot of times if I'm teaching something and I want to make it stick in her memory, that's when I throw in that huge Mickey Mouse praise. So if I was like, she's only done this a couple times here. Spin. Good girl! Yes. Now that'll mark. She's never been trained to do this. Spin. Good, yes! Good girl. Spin. So now the other thing I'm using is alluring. I'm luring the dog. Luring with my hands. What to do? Sit. Good. I'm using a hand signal with luring. Down. Good girl. Down. Yes, rewarding in position. When she went to the down, I rewarded her exactly when she was in the position that I wanted her to remember, right? Okay, so let's do the next slide. So, I wanted to talk about this. Basic obedience consists of sit, stay, down, recall, and place. This is my definition. Some people may say it's more advanced than this, but generally, these are what a dog that you're paying a trainer to do basic obedience. These are the tasks that they're training the dog to do. Also, for basic obedience, the dog is on a leash, a 6-foot leash. This is a 6-foot leash is the standard size leash for a dog. Anything above it is like a training leash, 15-foot training, 30-foot training. We don't use retractable leashes because they're dangerous. They can rip all the skin off your fingers. You can be not paying attention and you didn't do any recall training with your dog. It sees a squirrel and you're over here and it pulls you down to the ground and we break your face. So we don't use those tools because they're terrible tools, right? But I would use maybe a retractable on a little Chihuahua. Who cares, right? But I'm not going to put a retractable on a working dog unless it's been thoroughly trained and maybe I'm doing search work and then I can let the dog go on a retractable and work an area. It's more advanced stuff. But those tools, I don't recommend. So this is the standard 6-foot leash, basic obedience, sit, stay down, recall in place. Next, sir. So the art of luring. You saw how I was getting the dog to do a circle and I was making these big like movements with my body and being animated with it. The more animated you are and visual, the better the luring works, right? So if I'm saying come, which is, I pair a hand signal with every single dog. So, you know, come is the hand signal this, sit for the hand signal is this, but the way that these hand signals exist or how they even form, like why does this mean sit? Well, this means sit because when I taught the dog, sit, I held the treat in my hand and I get her head to look up, yes, and reward. It's luring, I'm luring the dog to follow my hand. When she follows my hand, she's forced to sit. So this is sit, the luring of down, I have the treat in my hand in between my fingers like this. I like to hold it so my fingers don't get bit. So I'm luring down, down, yes, and reward. The second she went into position, she got paid. We're gonna keep her on the continuous reward schedule because she's a puppy and she needs to do this over and over. Once I know she knows it, we're gonna make her do it down here, do it down here, do it down here, then pay. That's called a ratio reward schedule. So let's say we do 3 commands, then the dog gets rewarded. 5 commands, then the dog gets rewarded. Then we do random. Now we're doing sit, stay, down, place, come, making the dog work, but she knows that the reason she's doing all these things, at the end of it, you're getting paid. You're getting paid to do the job. If you had an employee, you want to teach them to work, be really good employees, maybe you pay them immediately, right? So I need you to paint this wall, boom, you got $100. It's like, man, this is the best employer I've ever worked with. But eventually, this guy's gonna start to become pretty conceited and he's gonna be like, yo, I just painted that wall, pay me. No, I need you to complete the building and then I'll pay you. So that's the analogy that I use with the dogs. So we start paying our employees immediately, then we start to stretch it out and get them to work for us for a longer period of time. Come. Good. Yes. So you see how the dog was distracted by him, was just staring at him? Those are the perfect times to tell the dog to come and do it with training. If she didn't listen to me, she would have got like, you know, a little correction like this. Redirection, you know? Yes. Even this correction is kind of like redirecting the dog, you know? Redirecting her attention. Pay attention over here. Yes. And see how we were walking forward and she wanted to keep going? And I gave her a little correction to stay in position, and I can reward her, yes. And she'll start to understand, she'll pick up. And we go forward, no. Yes, reward. So now I'm trying to teach her to stay in this heel position. Yes, good. This is just the very basics of this stuff, super basic. And if I can teach her to lure, heel. Yes, good. And she's paid in the perfect position that where she should be in a heel. We'll walk over here, a walking heel. Yes, good.
So if
and we're doing
somebody
small durations, like small walks.
is doing like training, I'm assuming it would be like a building of luring for like scent, like search dogs and that kind of thing. It's basically like a building.
Yeah, and the training
of
is always
training.
ongoing because we can reach off-leash obedience or something, and the dog can regress, and we've got to go back to the basics and
Right.
build up. It's a fluctuating scale with them, and we're constantly always training and maintaining. Like, even all this basic obedience will go away if we stop doing it.
Right.
There's the drills that we got to do. We got to take 15 minutes a day, work with each dog, and then you'll have obedient dogs just because you're working with them. Come. Good. You see how she wasn't looking at me, but she's been conditioned so many times that she was like a robot. Like she just did it because of the reward. All right, so you guys understand luring and how you use the be animated with it. If you want her to do, let's see if, I haven't done any of this with her, so we're learning together. Come here. Up. Up. Come on, get.
Wait, what?
Yep, good, yes, so that's the baby step. If I want to teach a dog to get onto this little tiny platform, the first stage is to get her paws up here. Come on, up. Yes, and pay her, right? And then eventually we're going to start to lure it out a little bit until she puts her whole body on and she'll get a bunch of praise. That's using successive approximation to get to the goal of the dog being on the small object. Does that make sense? So luring is super simple. But you're using a food object, you're using a toy. I got a Kong, a ball. Come. It's about to give her a no. Good girl. Good. But she's not a robot. She's a dog. So I gave her a second for that to mentally process and didn't give her a correction so fast. You know what I mean? She's a puppy. It took a second. Oh, okay. I need to come. Let's go to the next section. And she's becoming better every day, and the more training we do. That's why these Malinois need intensive amounts of training, but they're unlike other dogs where the training sticks and they learn so fast. Maybe one time you show them how to do it and they just got it. But if you don't do the training, you've got a crazy little dinosaur. So experience is the teacher of all things. Literally the majority of all the things I know is by experimenting, doing the things, failing, realizing this doesn't work, paying attention to what I do, and just building your experience with more dogs. As you foster more dogs, fix more dogs, train more dogs, you're going to get better and better. You guys communicate your ways amongst each other. You find people that are open-minded, and through experience, you're just going to become better and better at what you do. And who knows how many dogs you're fixing, cranking out, and not, you know, I think that a rescue alone isn't going to be effective unless it's training too. You guys need to be rescuing and training at the same time, because throwing dogs out, taking dogs in and having a big heart and just trying to find, you know, the person, but it's not going to work. They're going to come right back. You need to train them, give them a foundation, educate the people that are picking them up, and then boom, you got a forever home. So the next slide, please. All right, so we're in the basics, right? Teaching sit, down, and come, using luring and hand signals. When I talk to you, if I was to say like, Steve, come here, and he would come, right? Because I did a hand signal, I said his name, and I used a command and a hand signal. So we want to always work on pairing our hand signals with the commands, and just make it, that's how you do things, like your robot. You know, sit, down, come, and you're always doing it. If you're not giving hand signals, the dog may not listen, because the dog may have only learned the hand signal and not so much the verbal word yet. So sometimes I can do stuff with her. Let me see. I'll try to just work with her with just hand signals and see how she does. So she's understanding one single form of communication pretty well. Dogs are very visual creatures, and it's because for their survival, they need to read. Ugh. You see that heel she just did? So she's starting to be proactive in her thought process to do things to appease me to get the reward. Yep. This would be like training a deaf dog, right?
Yeah.
It's all visual. She's only going to focus on what's moving, the object targeting the movement. Luring, pay, and position. But if she was deaf, how do you give her a reward? The only two that you're going to give her is the treat and the physical touch and love. But she deserves all of it, so. Good girl! Yes. So, you can see the importance of hand signals, right? The dog will learn hand signals before it'll even learn the command. So if I just go down, she's not to that point yet. But if I go down, yes. We gotta keep pairing, we gotta keep doing conditioning until I can remove my hand signal and I say down and she throws herself up and down. But that takes a lot of conditioning, and then we're removing one of the aspects, and then she's doing just the verbal. Down. Yes, good girl. So there's so much more goes into this. We start getting into intermediate obedience. So like this is basic. I said down, I did a hand signal and she did it. But if I want her to stay in a down, now we've got to start to do other things. So down, stay. No. So she broke. Good, right? Stay. Put it back in the original position. The approach. Yes, good girl. Move the training environment to a different little area. Sit. Did you see how I gave her a little tiny correction? Like, that was so small. It's like not even a correction, it's a direction. I kind of pulled up on the leash. Down. Down. Good. So there's two different ways to do things. Like I'm using a little bit of pressure and compulsion to pull her into a down. That method worked, but I also had the positive reinforcement of luring her with the treat and doing it. There's many ways to do things. It doesn't mean one way is right or one way is wrong, but for her, the way that I just made her down, she wasn't very excited about it and happy, and I'm forcing her to do it. So that's a last case scenarios where you're going to force the animal to do something, but because the other methods aren't working, so we need to figure out something, right? So we'll have to force her to do it. Come. Sit. So work on your guys' luring, or just focus, be cognizant on that. Be focused on your hand signals and your voice and pairing. Up next. Okay, understanding marking. Using the word good to mark positive behavior, no for undesired behavior, reward follows positive marking. We already talked about that. I think everybody understands that, right? Does anyone have any questions about that? What does that mean? You all got it? You want me to show you again? No? Okay, let's move on. All right, cool. Now we get into stuff I briefly touched on, reward schedules. So food reward, verbal praise reward, toy reward, physical praise reward. These are all different types of rewards. And then schedules for giving these, you have to have an approach to this, right? When do we give the food reward? How often do we give food reward? Do we give it every time they do it? So we have schedules for how we do that. Continuous, ratio, random. And I taught you that already. So in the beginning form, training is broken down into three things. You need to write this down. Teaching, training, proofing. You put a dog through a series of three things: teaching, training, and proofing. This dog is in the teaching phase because she's a puppy. So when we're in the teaching phase, we're going to use continuous reward system.
What?
Continuous reward. Teaching, training, proofing. You're gonna have this video, so you can fast forward and watch this part as many times as you want. So continuous is for puppies and a dog that knows nothing. He hasn't been conditioned to do anything, so we need to keep him on a continuous reward schedule. Come, good girl, payment. Come, good girl, payment. It's continuous reward. Every time you did something, you got paid. Now we know that this dog knows what come means. I've done it so many times. We've seen her not pay attention. I say come and she did it. She knows the command. So now we're going to go into a ratio. So we're going to put the dog in the training phase. So now she's in the training phase of we're not teaching no more, we're training her. So we're going to do 3 comes, we're going to do 4, then we're going to do 6. And you're doing this over the course of maybe a week or 2, So for every day, we're working for 10 minutes with 3 comes, 3 sits, 3 downs, wherever she's out in training, and then we progress it. So once she's doing that and she's killing it, then we're going to go to a random reward schedule. So now we're going to start linking a series of commands. So we'll do, let me see. Thing is she's not to this level, but I'm sure she'll still do some of it. So let's see. Come, good. Sit, good. Come, sit, down, come, sit. Yes, good girl! She just did a whole daisy chain of commands, right? 2. So her little jumping behavior, if I want to stop that, I'm not going to use positive reinforcement. I'm not going to use love. I'm going to correct her. and she's eventually going to learn that she's not allowed to bite my hands. No, but Malinois and some dogs are just so stubborn that it doesn't matter. I keep correcting her. It doesn't matter. So I might have to start. Eventually, if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to change pace and try to increase it. Now I'm going to hold the e-collar. I'm going to teach you this next. We're going to find her working level, which is like where the dog throws a response when I give the e-collar. And then every time she goes for my hand, I'm going to time it for the second that her feet come off the ground, she's going to get correction. So you guys are going to be introduced to that. But for the sake of this, I want you guys to know continuous, ratio, random, and I want you to know the different types of rewards to give dogs. Yes?
See,
Does anyone have questions about like why you would use a random, when you would use a random?
what type of collar do you have on her right now? Is that
A control collar, or also known as a choke chain.
Okay.
So, and she loves it. And the way that I know that my methods aren't like abusive or inducive is because when I take that choke, I don't leave the choke chain on the dog all the time. I use it as a tool, right? We're gonna go for a walk. You put on your equipment. We're gonna go. When I pull that choke chain off the door where it's hanging, she's incredibly excited to see that tool. Now, if I was using a tool that she's afraid of, she's probably gonna run away. I've seen dogs that have been overly shocked with an e-collar, and the second that they see that e-collar, they're hiding. So I know that my methods are not negative to this dog, because when I pull that e-collar out, this dog's throwing a freaking like a party to use it and to have this done. That's indicative of that I know it works. Can we move on to the next slide, or is there any more questions? Look at her, she's just being so perfect. She needs to be rewarded for that. Yes. Good girl. And this type of training where like the dog just does something is called self-discovery. If a dog can self-discover what it's supposed to do opposed to being lured and taught to do it, it'll stick with the dog much longer and easier for the life of the dog. If she self-discovers how to act and how to behave around me and gets rewarded, it's in there. You've skipped multiple stages of training because the dog has self-discovered it. Does that make sense? I hope I'm not boring you guys too much. We talked about reward schedules, continuous reward schedule, ratio reward schedule, random reward schedule. And you know, when you spit this out to people, if they're questioning you about training and you're like, listen, this dog is in the first stages of training, we haven't even got to teaching and proofing, and we're using a continuous reward schedule. They're gonna be like, this person knows what they're talking about when it comes to training, right? Instead of, you know, not being able to explain yourself. So I think it's super important. And it's super important to have really well off-leash obedient dogs, because you can't do something without a structured approach to it. Like, you can't perceive excellence without having a path to excellence. You're not just going to wander there on accident, in my opinion. Next. You guys want another break?
No.
We want to press.
Okay.
All right, let's press. All right, so advanced obedience. Now, this is on, you guys need to write this down. Advanced obedience consists of distractions. So if I'm telling the dog to come and he's over here going, come here, come here, and then I'm trying to do my commands, that's a more advanced level of training, because now I'm teaching the dog to ignore a distraction and do a command. The next one is off leash. So when the dog is off leash and has no control devices on it, it's a far distance away from you. This is advanced obedience, because the dog can choose to do whatever it wants. It can say, screw you, run over to the door, can go jump on the table, eat those muffins, please don't let her. No. So you see how now my voice has power? It's just because I've been consistent with it. She'll go right back though. No, right then, the second that she went up on the table, I'd give a little e-collar and fix the whole issue. But I haven't worked her yet, so I can't have expectations for this dog to not do that, because haven't had the opportunity to train her. So, yeah, no control devices. Another thing with advanced obedience is it takes time. It can take years. Like, we spend 2-3 years to get a dog to be to a certain level of advanced obedience where it doesn't do any distraction, no distractions falter it. It can do all the commands in every single environment. It can do it whether it's freezing outside, it's hot outside, it's raining outside, people are yelling, people are running by, there's animals. That is an intense amount of training to get to that level, and you got to be patient, and you got to have your approach and take your time doing it. Yeah, lots of training, different environments. Dog is in the final stages of proofing. So that's where we're at with advanced obedience. The dog is still in the teaching stage of it. We're not out of advanced obedience, but